I even sold my own wedding heirlooms to help my daughter-in-law's entire family, while she leisurely wore a designer dress worth thousands of dollars. And her father complained every single day about being poor, saying he didn't have enough money to buy medicine. Yet the supermarket receipts revealed the truth: imported wine and premium Wagyu beef. And my son worked himself to the bone, day and night, until exhaustion, just to support a fraudulent scheme that had been carefully staged, detailed down to every single month. Then, the truth was exposed through a cold confession. "You're nothing but an ATM. I never needed anything from you except money." The final, fatal blow the father-in-law nonchalantly uttered. "I chose her because she was easy to fool." That was the moment a marriage shattered, a family collapsed, and also the moment I decided to stand up and bring justice back for my son. Before the full truth is revealed, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments, because what comes next will surely shock you. My name is Margaret Hale, 66 years old. Every wrinkle on my face is a mark of battles I never chose but was forced to endure. People in the neighborhood call me the quiet woman in the patched coat, always carrying a grocery bag and counting small change several times before paying. But they don't know that behind every coin is a story of sacrifice. I live alone in a small, dim apartment in the city. The pension isn't enough to pay for rent or electricity. 4 nights a week, people see me pushing an old cart through alleys, collecting bottles and cans. On weekends, I quietly mop office floors when the whole city is asleep. My body is weary, aching, but I always told myself, it's all worth it, because every dollar sent away is to keep my son from drowning. Daniel Hale, my hope. The only reason I kept going after my husband died. On his deathbed, holding his hand as he took his final breath, I swore, "I will protect our son with everything I have, no matter the cost." That vow became the purpose of my life. 4 years ago, Daniel married Vanessa Carter. At the very first dinner, I sensed a distance in her. Not just shyness, but in her eyes was a cold gaze, half contempt, half pride. She glanced at my old shoes, my torn sleeve, as if to expose my poverty. I told myself, give her time, maybe she'll change. I remember the old days, in those heavy rains, standing outside Daniel's workplace, holding a broken umbrella, my back soaked through, yet still spreading my arms to shield him. He whispered, "Mom, one day I won't let you suffer anymore." That very sentence lit up a flame of hope in me. But life is never easy. When Daniel said Vanessa's family was struggling, even though he already gave all his wages to his wife, but Daniel still tried to handle things on his own. Hospital bills, repairs, emergencies, pitying my son. I didn't hesitate. I emptied my tiny savings, postponed necessary medical checkups, even once refused a minor surgery just to save money for them. I chose to endure every hardship, just so my son would never think his mother was useless. My coat is torn in 7 places, stitched and patched like an old blanket. There were weeks when I ate only dry bread and drank plain water, yet still wrote a check with a note. "Don't worry about me, my son." Even now, I still wear the faded gold wedding ring, a reminder of my promise to my husband, to protect the family. I once believed that sacrifice was the path to love, that endurance was the only way to keep my son. But tonight, as I sit alone and look back, I ask myself, has that blind devotion ever truly been appreciated? As time went on, the strange things in Vanessa Carter's behavior began to reveal themselves. At first, they were only small details, but gradually, they appeared like cracks in what once seemed like flawless glass. The polite smile from the first day disappeared. Vanessa's gaze at me was no different from a cold inspection, like a homeowner glancing at an old, useless piece of furniture taking up space in the living room. The warm embrace of a daughter-in-law had never existed. Instead, there was only a bland nod, as though granting a favor. I tried to tell myself it was just her personality, but deep down, I knew. In her eyes, There had never been love. Then came the repeated pleas. We're short $320 on the rent. This time it's really urgent. Every month, the same, like a broken record played over and over. And every month, I had to grit my teeth, cut back on medicine, cut back on food, and again take out my wallet to help. Once, when Daniel came to visit, I saw my son sigh as he read a message. His eyes darkened, and by chance, I caught a glimpse of the words, "Daniel, Dad fell down the stairs. We need $530 urgently. I beg you." The hastily written words, the wrong punctuation, but enough to pierce the filial heart of my son. And I, as a mother, was helpless, watching the money from his sweat and tears slip away like sand through fingers. Richard Carter, Vanessa's father, every time he met Daniel, shook his hand too tightly, laughed too long, then praised him as a kind son-in-law. But I knew well that it wasn't affection. It was the imprint stamped on my son's wallet. Another time, when I cautiously voiced my concern, Vanessa smiled sweetly, but her eyes slid toward the branded handbag with the tag still attached on the chair. "Don't worry so much, we're fine." The faint scent of expensive perfume on her coat sent a chill down my spine, a scent I had only ever encountered in luxury stores, I had never dared step into in my life. Vanessa was very skilled in the art of soothing. After every request for money, she would always add a promise of paying back little by little, then immediately switch the subject. "Mother, how have you been lately? I worry about you so much." It sounded tender, but I knew well. It was just sugarcoating on a bitter pill called exploitation. Even Richard was no different. I once saw him complain that he didn't have enough money for medicine while stroking a shiny gold bracelet on his wrist. That scene etched deeply in my mind, a man so used to lying that he accidentally let the truth slip out. Their family even created an invisible debt chart. Vanessa always reminded Daniel, "Remember the last time you helped us? That time we almost lost everything." That reminder wasn't gratitude, but a way to turn kindness into binding obligation. My son, my filial child, even abandoned important work just to listen to his wife cry about some bill. He didn't know that every tear was a weapon of control. One evening, when it was just me and Vanessa in the kitchen, she looked me straight in the eyes, smiling coldly. "We young people will manage in our own way. You don't need to worry in the old ways anymore." That was not advice, but a warning. I also remember once when Daniel received a blurry, hurriedly snapped invoice, without a logo, without a stamp of approval. Yet he believed it right away, pulling out money without a shred of doubt. But all I saw was a fake piece of paper pretending to be proof. The peak was that twilight evening. After calling and crying that there was no more money for food, I happened to pass by their house on my way back from work and heard loud laughter, the clinking of glasses. I froze at the door, feeling like a fool watching a cheap play I still believed to be real. And then I realized a chilling pattern. Every 26th of the month, a crisis occurred, sometimes for medicine, sometimes for car repairs, sometimes for a child's tuition. A cycle as precise as a clock. That night, after finishing my cleaning shift, I dragged myself home along the deserted street. The fluorescent lights flickered, and the sound of my own footsteps echoed as if someone were following behind me. I was exhausted, only wanting to open the door of my home and collapse onto the familiar creaky bed. But then, a hoarse voice rose up behind me. You are Daniel's mother, aren't you?" I startled and turned back. At the corner of the street, a middle-aged woman was approaching, clutching a torn paper bag to her chest. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken as if she hadn't slept in many nights. She slowed her steps as she came closer, her voice trembling but firm. "Please listen to me. Don't believe what Vanessa's family tells you. They are not struggling the way they say." I frowned, the instinct of a mother urging me to protest. But her bony hand trembled as she pulled out a stack of old papers from her bag and quickly shoved them into my hands. On the wrinkled surface were handwritten lines, debts, dates, and the name Richard Carter. The woman exhaled, tears welling in her eyes. She handed me an old loan receipt signed R. Carter. Back then, they borrowed money from me and promised to repay, but now they've turned their backs. Because it was only handwritten papers, I lost everything, and now I live like the homeless. When I learned you had ties to them, I forced myself to come here. Please stay away and don't stay silent like I once did. Save your son before it's too late." Then she turned and walked quickly, fading into the pitch-dark street, her figure vanishing as though she had never existed. I stood frozen, the paper trembling violently in my hand. Inside me, a seed of doubt had just sprouted. Small, but its roots were deep, and I knew it would grow into a storm. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. After many months, today I would go to Vanessa's house. Inside me, the excitement and the fear from last night's story intertwined so heavily that it was hard to breathe. I opened the glass jar placed in the corner of the kitchen. The clinking of coins against each other sounded like a familiar song, the song of years of hardship. I counted slowly. 2 crumpled $10 bills and 24 coins. Total, $44. That tiny amount was the result of many skipped breakfasts, the times I passed by the little tea shop on the corner, all to make sure today I could afford a proper cake. I chose the dress I saved for truly important days, with each stitch carefully adjusted by my own hand. It wasn't luxurious, but it was neat and presentable. I pinned on the pair of earrings my mother left me, the only keepsake reminding me, hold on to your dignity, even when your pockets are empty. In the mirror clouded with steam, I saw a 66-year-old widow, gray hair, a face carved with exhaustion. But I also saw a mother still resilient, never once fallen. I whispered to myself, at least today, Daniel will see that his mother is still standing strong. Right on time, Daniel knocked on the door. As always, my son was punctual. He placed his hand on my shoulder, his eyes gentle. "Mom, don't worry, I'm here." Those words made my eyes sting with tears, but I only smiled, hiding my emotions. Before going to Daniel and Vanessa's house, I asked to stop at the grocery store to buy an extra cake. I chose a simple cream cake, priced at $23 cheaper than I had planned, so I also bought a small card. To me, every penny was precious. But right at the checkout, trouble happened. My bank card was declined. The sharp beep rang out like a public slap. My face burned red as I hurriedly pulled out the cash I had prepared. The cashier looked up, staring at me intently. Then he lowered his voice and asked quietly, You're Daniel's mother, aren't you? Mrs. Margaret Hale?" My throat tightened. I nodded. He leaned closer, his voice low and urgent. "If you trust me, then listen carefully. There are things you've never known." I stood frozen, clutching the cake box. Its sweet aroma suddenly turned bitter, a warning of something serious about to unfold. The cashier's fingers tightened around my wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough to make my heart race. He leaned in, whispering as though afraid someone else might hear. "Don't resist. Listen carefully. This is about your son." I focused, hardly daring to breathe. He swallowed hard, then spoke, each word like a stone thrown onto the still surface of a lake. "Your daughter-in-law's family. They're not poor. I see them here all the time. They don't buy cheap bread or milk. They spend hundreds of dollars on French wine, imported beef, fresh seafood. I rang up a bill of exactly $618 for Mr. Richard Carter, and the very next day, Vanessa called Daniel crying that they didn't have money for her father's medicine. My mouth fell open, speechless. He pulled a small notebook from beneath the counter, its edges worn. Inside were scribbles of dates, times, items, and the familiar names. Richard, Vanessa. I've written it all down. I know I'm taking a risk, but I can't stay silent. My mother was scammed just like you. I did nothing, and I've lived with regret my whole life. I won't let you repeat that tragedy. My lips trembled. Are you sure? Couldn't you be mistaken? He looked at me, eyes burning, voice firm. There is no mistake. Your son's kindness is feeding their luxury. I felt faint. Images of Daniel working day and night, his eyes darkened with exhaustion, cut into my heart like blades. The cashier sighed, lowering his voice to a whisper only I could hear. If you need more proof, I'll collect it. But please, don't mention my name. I still have a family to feed. They aren't as harmless as you think. And remember, never go to their house alone after dark. He discreetly slipped a small piece of paper into the cake box I was holding. This is my number. When you're ready, call me. I held the cake box so tightly my signature on the receipt came out jagged. At that moment, Vanessa's image flashed through my memory. Her radiant smile, hand brushing her freshly dyed hair, her voice pleading for money, cracked from sobbing. How many times had I believed? How many times had I emptied my meager savings because I trusted her words? The cashier concluded, his voice like a verdict. They call your son here a walking ATM. Do you understand? Suddenly, tears streamed down my face, though no sound of crying escaped. I buried the pain deep inside my chest, compressing it into iron. I nodded, lifting the cake box like someone carrying evidence of a crime. From that moment on, a resolve sprouted within me. If all this is true, at the very least, I will save my son. That night, after the family gathering ended and I returned home, I didn't sleep. The clock ticked each dry, hollow beat, like a countdown to the moment the truth would be exposed. In my mind, only one thought echoed. If I don't see it with my own eyes, if I don't have clear proof, Daniel will never believe me. The next afternoon, I decided to follow Richard Carter. My heart pounded with nervousness, but I told myself I had to gather proof. I boarded an old bus, riding nearly 15 minutes before reaching the neighborhood where Vanessa's family lived. Sitting on the seat, I gripped the strap of my bag tightly, my chest restless as though I were walking into a battle I wasn't sure I had the strength for. When I got off at the stop, I happened to see Richard driving away from the large house at the end of the street. I immediately hailed a nearby taxi and told the driver, "Follow that car. Don't let him notice." The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes skeptical, but then nodded. The taxi trailed at a steady distance. I pressed myself low against the back seat, my heartbeat thundering. Richard drove through many streets, occasionally stopping at red lights. And each time the taxi drew closer, I held my breath, terrified he would notice. At last, he turned into a large supermarket downtown. I asked the driver to stop a block away, paid, and got out. Instead of heading straight in, I circled to the back entrance, where the parking lot was, and hid behind a pile of overflowing trash bins. The stench rose sharply into my nose, making me nauseous, but I clenched my teeth, pressed my back against the cold metal, my eyes fixed on the supermarket doors. And then, Richard appeared. He walked out, carrying 2 bulging plastic bags. Inside glimmered bottles of Napa Valley red wine and expensive Wagyu beef luxuries I had only ever dared to look at through frozen glass displays. The setting sun glinted off the bottles, turning them a dazzling shade of red so starkly opposed to my life, where I counted pennies just to survive. Every step he took trampled on my dignity. His tailored shirt fit snugly, his polished leather shoes so shiny I could see my worn-out reflection in them. A gold bracelet gleamed on his wrist, flaunting itself. Richard headed toward his car, and only then did I realize it was a brand new model. The engine hummed softly, the glossy paint reflecting the harsh sunlight. This was not the old, battered car Vanessa had told Daniel about. On the windshield, the temporary tag was still visible, proof that the vehicle had been bought only recently. My hands trembling, I pulled out my old phone. 1 photo, then 2, then 3, the shopping bags, the car trunk, the golden bracelet. Each click was another piece of evidence. Then he lifted his phone to his ear, his deep voice audible. "Reserve a table for 10 tonight. Foie gras, steak, truffles. Don't forget plenty of white wine." I froze. So those desperate messages, begging for a few $100s for medicine, all of it was a cheap play. Richard closed the trunk, pressed the lock. A sharp beep sounded. He whistled a carefree jazz tune, glancing around with the sly eyes of someone accustomed to deceit. In that instant, I saw my own reflection on the car window, small, trembling, powerless. As he stepped into the car, a small card slipped from his pocket onto the concrete. I waited until he had driven off before hurrying over to pick it up. Embossed letters read, "Richard Carter VIP member." A golden emblem gleamed arrogantly. I swallowed hard, pinching my hand sharply to stay awake. Memories rushed back. The year my husband fell gravely ill, I sold the necklace, the gift from my father on my wedding day, to pay the hospital bills. I had given up the most precious keepsake of my life, while they wasted my son's sweat and blood on luxury wines and extravagant food. My fist clenched so tightly it bled, the mark of anger rising within me. I whispered, my voice breaking, "Daniel, I'm sorry. I let them live in lies and luxury on your sweat and blood." I, Margaret Hale, had in my hands the first piece of truth. And from that moment, I knew this road had no way back. I will not walk away empty-handed. At the very least, I will bring justice. The late afternoon sunlight spilled across the parking lot, casting a wavering halo over my gray hair. I still stood frozen there, my heart pounding, when suddenly I heard the rattling of wheels on pavement. Two elderly women, each pushing a cart loaded with groceries, slowly passed by. At first, I paid little attention, but then the name they mentioned made my blood boil. Vanessa. The plumper woman with silver hair lowered her voice in surprise. "Did you see that dress Vanessa wore yesterday at the shopping center? I saw the exact same one upstairs in the luxury store, at least $465. The other, thinner woman with glasses, gave a dry laugh and replied, "The dress is nothing. My niece works at the imported cosmetics counter, and she says Vanessa is a VIP customer. Every time she comes, she swipes her card like it's raining money, as if money grew on a tree in her backyard." My chest ached. They didn't know that every dollar was my son's sweat and tears. The plump woman shook her head, pushing her cart as she spoke. "What I don't understand is, she keeps claiming they're poor. Just last week, she said her father was so sick they couldn't afford his medicine. Yet only a few days later, they hired a pianist and had a fresh flower backdrop for Richard's birthday party. I heard it cost several $1,000s. The thinner one lowered her voice, her eyes darting nervously as though afraid someone might overhear. "People say they even have a whole script to ask for money every month. Each month there's some crisis: medicine, rent, car repairs. The cycle is as regular as a clock." I clenched my teeth, forcing my breath to stay steady and quiet. My whole body trembled. I wanted to burst out and confront them, but reason screamed at me, "Stay silent." The Americans call it gossip rumors, but every word they spoke matched perfectly with what I had already seen with my own eyes. The plump woman leaned closer, her voice half whisper, half certainty. "My husband works at the bank. He said Vanessa's family account is nowhere near poor. Just one look at the transactions and you can see they're more than comfortable." The thinner one whispered again, "If they were really poor, they wouldn't be buying wine at $180 a bottle, Martha." Then both of them burst out laughing. The dry, sharp sound cut straight into my heart. Before my eyes, bitter memories returned. The night I withdrew my last $210 from my emergency savings to hand to Vanessa. She cried, saying she had to choose between medicine or food. That night I tossed and turned, imagining them shivering in hardship. Now the truth slapped me across the face. While I wept with pity, they were raising glasses of white wine, piano music echoing in a luxury restaurant. The thinner woman paused, glancing around before concluding coldly, "Best to stay away from them. They flip their faces fast. Anyone who resists gets turned into the villain." The two women eventually disappeared down the street, but their voices still echoed in my head like a prophecy. and all I could do was whisper in despair. The whole neighborhood can see it clearly. Only my son and I are blind. On my weary walk toward the bus stop, I once again saw Richard Carter at a car wash. I moved closer. Richard pulled a thick stack of bills from his pocket and tipped the attendant. From where I stood, I couldn't count exactly, but it was far more than just a few notes. He even muttered mockingly, "Do it carefully, understand?" The car washer nodded, as if accepting an order. I raised my phone to take a photo, only to see the battery bar flashing at 3%. Cold sweat ran down my spine. If the phone died now, the evidence would be lost. Just then, my phone vibrated. A text popped up. "Mom, where have you been so long? I've been waiting at home. Is something wrong?" I tried typing 3 times, but my hands shook so much the words were all wrong. Finally, I hurriedly sent, "Coming home soon." My heart felt shattered. Richard climbed into his car, the engine humming smoothly as it pulled away, the relaxed manner of someone who never knew the meaning of hardship. I dragged myself toward the bus stop, my steps heavy. When I arrived home, Daniel was still waiting on the porch, his eyes filled with worry. "Mom, are you okay? You're so pale. Are you having chest pain?" I forced a thin smile, hiding my trembling hands behind my back. "It's nothing. I just went for a walk." Daniel looked at me, hesitating, but didn't ask more. I dropped into a chair while a silent storm raged in my mind. The afternoon sun fell across Daniel's face, gentle, trusting, and yet bound by the cunning ropes of deception. I probed cautiously. "How's Richard's business lately, son? Did Vanessa say anything?" Daniel sighed, tightening his grip on the steering wheel of his car parked nearby. "Vanessa said her father's company cut his hours. They're having a hard time. I've been sending them extra money these past few months to help them through." His words flowed too smoothly, painfully so. In my mind, I still saw Richard tossing cash at the car wash, his trunk filled with luxury groceries. I swallowed my anger and pressed further. "Have you ever noticed anything that doesn't quite add up in their stories? Anything strange?" Daniel fell silent, his eyes welling with tears, but then he stiffened and replied firmly, "Mom, I've told you. This is my wife's family. I trust her. Without trust, marriage means nothing." His answer left me torn between anger and sorrow. From a neighbor's radio came an old ballad about love and betrayal. The melody added another layer to the tragedy. My son was breaking his back with endless work, sending money to feed another family in their freshly painted house. Blood rushed to my ears, and I wanted to scream for the whole world to hear, but I knew this was not the moment. Carelessness would only drive my son further away, so I kept silent. I held the truth inside me, like a heavy stone lodged in my mouth, neither able to spit it out nor swallow it. I gripped my phone, now drained of battery, and steadied my resolve. The evidence was in my hands, and I would use it at the right moment. I would not let go. I would wait, I would watch, and if necessary, I would tear apart their web of lies with the truth I had gathered. My shabby apartment lay silent under the dim yellow light. I had just plugged my phone into the charger, the warmth of the teacup still lingering in my hands, when a knock echoed at the door. I opened it. Before me stood Vanessa Carter. My daughter-in-law looked as though she had just stepped off a stage. A sleek, fitted dress, sharp heels clicking briskly, a designer handbag gleaming under the hallway light. On her wrist, a brand-new gold watch sparkled. Vanessa smiled radiantly. Extending a plastic bag inside were a few cheap cookies bought hurriedly from a street stall, though she had wrapped them in shiny paper to fake sophistication. "Mother Margaret, I've missed you so much. I bought a few treats for you. Is Daniel here?" I couldn't reach him. I took the bag, my hand trembling. Cheap cookies, cloaked in a mask of glittering paper. Daniel stepped out, resting his hand on my shoulder, his voice heavy with worry. "Mom, are you okay? Don't worry, she's here." I invited Vanessa inside. In my cramped room, her expensive dress, handbag, and perfume turned everything into a mockery. She sat down and sighed softly, her voice strained as though choking back tears. "Mother, I don't want to bother you, but my father, his illness has worsened. The medicine prices went up. This week, we're only short $380. If not, I fear he won't survive." I stared at her intently. "Which clinic? What medicine? Where is the bill, Vanessa?" She blinked, hesitated, then forced a nervous laugh. "Oh, I must have left the bill in the car." Daniel frowned, turning to her. "But yesterday you told me it was from the Central Hospital." Vanessa quickly waved her hand, her voice rushing. "Ah, right. The hospital sent the medicine through a side clinic. I just got mixed up." My phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Alex Rivera, supermarket employee. I glanced quickly. "Mrs. Margaret, here is yesterday's receipt. $687.42. Items: Kobe beef, Norwegian salmon, Italian red wine, imported mousse cake. Order name, Richard Carter. If you need, I will collect more receipts. Don't let them fool you like they fooled my mother." My whole body froze. I flipped the phone face down, hiding it. I took a slow sip of tea, my voice calm but cold. "Vanessa, why didn't you take a photo of the bill to show me? Nothing to be embarrassed about." Her eyes flickered dark for an instant before she forced a stiff smile. "Mother, please don't worry about paperwork. What matters is that my father needs medicine, and quickly. If you could help, it would mean so much." I looked at the cheap cookie bag on the table, the glint of light reflecting off it like a mockery. Daniel spoke gently. "Mom, this is my wife's family. If they're struggling, we have to help, don't we?" I turned to my son, my gaze heavy with helplessness. "Help, but only with proof. From now on, I want to see the invoices, hear the doctors, know exactly where every dollar goes. No more left in the car, no more blurry photos, no more half-baked explanations." The air fell heavy. Vanessa gripped her purse straps, her smile cracking. Daniel looked at me apologetically. "Mom, I have to go now. I'll come back tomorrow, I promise." I nodded, forcing my voice steady. "Go on, son. But Daniel, before you send another dollar, you must call the hospital directly. Get the record number, the doctor's name, the list of medicines, and put it on speaker so I can hear too." Vanessa turned her head, her smile stiff. "Mother, don't you trust us?" I replied, "I only trust the truth, and truth is the only thing that can protect your marriage, Vanessa." They went silent. Daniel nodded slightly, while Vanessa turned away, her heels striking sharply against the hallway floor. The door closed, leaving me in a suffocating room. My phone buzzed again. I opened it. "Mrs. Margaret, I'm gathering the last 3 months of transaction history. If you need evidence, I will send it to you. Please, don't stay silent like my mother once did." I gripped the phone tightly, whispering, "No, I won't be silent. When all the pieces come together, their mask will fall, and this time, they will have no escape." The days after that night were like a nightmare repeating over and over. I lived as if carrying a time bomb in my chest, waiting for it to explode. Messages from Alex Rivera, the supermarket employee, kept coming. Each receipt, each photo was another knife twisting deeper into my heart. One receipt over $620, with Richard Carter's signature boldly at the bottom. Listed items: 2 bottles of Napa Valley wine, Wagyu beef, French cheese, fresh oysters, and an Italian mousse cake. On that very same day, Vanessa called Daniel, sobbing that her father's rent was overdue, that he was about to be thrown out on the street. I stared at the printed numbers, my hands shaking uncontrollably. What excuse could remain? Not long after, my phone rang again. A strange number appeared. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. On the other end was a woman's voice, hoarse but firm. "Are you Margaret? I got your number from Alex the cashier. He said you need to know the truth. I live near Richard. A few days ago, I saw with my own eyes his birthday party at a restaurant. They had fresh flower backdrops, LED lights blazing like a festival. A pianist, catering tables filled with food, wine bottles opened one after another. People whispered, "That party must have cost at least $5,000 to $7,000. I dropped the phone, my body numb. All those pleas, all those fake tears about medicine, poverty, hunger. It was all nothing but a cheap performance. That Thursday evening, Daniel came by. My son walked in, gaunt, his eyes sunken from endless overtime. I poured him a cup of tea and asked softly, "Son, are you okay? You look exhausted." He held his head, his voice hoarse, breaking. "Vanessa asked me for another $800 for a minor surgery for her father. Insurance won't cover it. I scrambled to raise the money, but I still don't have enough." His words were like a match dropped into gasoline. I slammed the teacup down on the table, my hands trembling. $800 for an emergency surgery. While on my phone, I still had a $600 receipt filled with wine and luxury food. I couldn't bear it anymore. I grabbed Daniel's hand, staring into his eyes. "My son, I must show you this. Remember, I'm doing this out of love for you, because I cannot stand by and watch you turned into a puppet." I unlocked my phone, pulling up the $620 receipt photo. Daniel stared at Richard's signature, his face drained of color. He jumped to his feet, stammering, "No, there must be some mistake. Maybe someone gifted it to them." I didn't let him escape. I swiped through each photo, each receipt, each date matching precisely with the desperate calls for help. I even told him about their neighbor who had witnessed the $1,000 birthday party. Daniel's face went pale. He shouted, "Impossible! Vanessa would never lie to me. She wouldn't." But then his voice cracked, trembling. He clutched his head, pacing the room like a madman. "Oh God, how could I be this stupid?" My voice turned cold as ice. "You've been used, Daniel. Nothing more, nothing less." That night, Daniel went home. At 3 a.m, my phone rang. My son's voice was choked, tangled with rage. "Mom, you were right about everything. I just found it all." He told me. In the closet, shopping bags piled with designer clothes, receipts, and price tags still intact. In the drawer, jewelry boxes. But the fatal blow was a small notebook hidden in Vanessa's handbag. A money request plan. The first page spelled it out. February fake heart medicine. April car repairs. June nephew's tuition. August emergency surgery. Month after month, detail by detail, not one left out. Daniel's voice broke. "Mom, for 4 years, she was never my wife. She was the treasurer of a scam." I bit my lip until it bled, but I knew my son had to face it himself. Daniel recalled, when he confronted Vanessa with the notebook, she went pale and shrieked, "You dare search my things? You betrayed me first." Daniel hurled the notebook to the floor, shouting, "Betrayal? Is this your idea of love? I was nothing but your ATM, wasn't I?" Vanessa's face flushed red, her words hissed like venom. "Yes, you're nothing but an ATM. Did you really think I needed anything from you besides your money?" Right then, her phone rang. Daniel answered on speaker. Richard's voice came through, calm as if discussing business. "So he found out? And what?" "From the start, I chose him because he was easy to fool. It's just business. Don't make a big deal." Daniel collapsed into a chair, his hands trembling like a child's. But then, slowly, he stood, fire blazing in his eyes. "I'm not a fool anymore. This ends now. Our marriage is over." Vanessa screamed, grabbing a wine glass and smashing it against the floor. "No one leaves me. No one." The door slammed shut. Her high heels pounded angrily against the floor, like gongs marking the end of a play. Through the phone, I heard Daniel's sobs. "Mom, I've lost everything." I wiped my tears, whispering, "No, son, you've only lost an illusion. The truth is still here, and I am still here." The months after that night of truth were a long journey, both painful and cleansing. Daniel moved out of the shared house and rented a small apartment near his workplace. I will never forget the first evening I visited him. The room was bare, only a metal bed, a wobbly wooden table, and a dim yellow bulb. My son sat there, his face gaunt, his eyes red. He whispered like a confession, "Mom, for 4 years I lived in a theater, and I was the fool on stage." I held him tightly, his sobs stabbing directly into my heart. During the divorce process, layer after layer of lies was peeled away like onions that stung the eyes. Daniel's lawyer discovered a secret account Vanessa had opened, transferring the money Daniel sent her, with clear records of transactions. In a safe, they also found expensive jewelry, diamond rings, jade bracelets, gold necklaces, things Daniel had never once seen her wear. On the day of the trial, Daniel sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the documents proving the loss of over $250,000 after years of endless work. It wasn't just money, it was his youth, his sleepless nights, his life force. His voice was hoarse. I could have bought a small apartment, or at least given my mother a more comfortable life. Instead, I threw it all into a black hole. I placed my hand on his shoulder, whispering, "No, Daniel, you didn't throw it away. You paid tuition for the greatest lesson of your life." Meanwhile, Richard Carter called me constantly, his voice choking with fake desperation. "Margaret, we'll return it all. Just tell Daniel to ease up, please." I answered firmly, each word sharp. "For 4 years, you had a chance to return the truth. You chose deceit. Now, you will pay the price." One evening, Vanessa herself came to my apartment. She wore an old sweater, her face bare, her hands trembling as she wiped away tears, the perfect image of yet another performance. "Mother, I know I was wrong, but I truly loved Daniel. Things just went out of control." I stared straight at her, my voice cold as ice. "You call that love? No, that was a one-way transaction. True love doesn't need a script." When she saw I wasn't moved, her eyes hardened, her voice sharp as a knife. "It was you who destroyed this marriage. If it weren't for you, Daniel would have been mine forever." I replied calmly, "No, Vanessa. You destroyed it the day you turned love into a tool." That was the last time I saw her. A few weeks later, word spread that Vanessa's family had quietly moved away, fleeing the contemptuous stares of the neighborhood. As for Daniel, my son fell into depression. Some nights he called me at 2 a.m, crying like a child. "Mom, will I ever be able to trust anyone again?" Those calls tore my heart apart. But slowly, I saw him rise again. He opened his own savings account, learned to manage his finances, and gradually regained his confidence. The day he brought me a new refrigerator, smiling as he said, "Mom doesn't have to count every coin anymore." I burst into tears. Not for the refrigerator, but because my son finally knew how to place love in the right place. During that time, Alex Rivera, the cashier, became a close friend. He sometimes dropped by with toast or fruit. One day, he said, "Silence can also be justice. Many people choose loud revenge, but you chose the truth, and truth always wins." Those words etched themselves deeply into me. Then Emily Parker entered Daniel's life. Simple, sincere, the complete opposite of Vanessa. The first day she visited, she joined me in the kitchen, rinsing vegetables while whispering, "Mother, I promise I will never ask you or Daniel for a penny. Whatever I need, I'll do it myself. All I want is love." I stood stunned. For the first time in years, I cried from happiness. Time passed, and Daniel laughed again. One Saturday afternoon, he took me and Emily to a small bistro on the corner, serving only pasta and modest wine. But that meal was sweeter than any luxury banquet. Emily held my hand and said softly, "Mother, I am pregnant, and I want our child to grow up in truth, not in lies." I choked back tears. Before me, Daniel was no longer a victim, but a man who had endured, who had learned wisdom. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my journal. I lost $23,000, but I gained my son back. Sometimes, love isn't staying silent to keep the peace, but daring to face conflict to save the one you love. And silent justice, in the end, it prevailed. I looked up at my late husband's photo and whispered, "My love, I kept my promise. I protected our son." In the kitchen, Daniel and Emily's laughter rang out the sound of a new home, of true liberation. The golden light spilled out through the window, like a lighthouse pushing away the darkness that once engulfed my life. 3 years have passed since that afternoon at the supermarket, when a stray remark from a stranger pulled me into a journey I had never imagined. A journey of tears, of betrayal, of truths buried, and finally, of liberation. Tonight, I sit in my old familiar armchair, a cup of tea cooling in my hands. The yellow lamp casts shadows long across the walls of my small room. From the kitchen, I hear Daniel and Emily Parker laughing together as they prepare dinner. Their laughter echoes like background music for my life. It is so different from the lies, the begging, the staged tragedies that once haunted that other household. This is the sound of truth, the sound of a new home, clean and proud. I remember the dark days, Daniel crying in the night, my son clutching his head in shame, my desperate search to collect scraps of evidence to prove the deceit. I remember his hollow eyes when he discovered the woman he once loved saw him only as an ATM. In those moments, I thought I had lost my son forever. But it was in that abyss that we discovered our true strength. Now, looking back, I understand. Money can be earned again, but freedom from the chains of deceit is priceless. Emily Daniel's new wife is nothing like Vanessa. Her simplicity and honesty are like a fresh breeze, sweeping away the stench of old lies. When she held my hand and said, "Mother, I will never ask you for a penny. All I ask is love and trust," I knew Daniel had finally found what Vanessa never gave him, true love. I looked up at my late husband's photo and whispered, "My love, I kept my word. I protected our son with everything I had left." Life has taught me one truth. Justice is not the punches we throw, not the screams of revenge. The strongest justice often comes in silence through steady decisions, through the courage to speak the truth, even when it shatters comforting illusions. Once, I feared that the truth would destroy my son, but now I know it was the truth that saved him. As I close this journal page, I shut my eyes, letting Daniel and Emily's laughter flow into the room. It resounds like a simple victory song, stronger than any anthem. Outside the window, the night is dark, but our small apartment glows with warm golden light. And I understand at last, silent justice has triumphed.